name's Dee and welcome to Sunchild Tarot, although if you are looking for a tarot reading, this is not the right video. I've already started my full moon work, for want of a better word. I've done a collective reading and I will be live streaming tonight, 6 p.m. London time, so that's 1 p.m. Eastern or 10 a.m. Pacific, but it is a Saturday. To do all these sign specific readings, but as you may notice from the collective reading that I've done a lot of work on this full moon as well. Now, one of the things that I noticed doing this preparation work is that this full moon is conjunct the chart of the first issue of Infinite Crisis. It is conjunct the Mars of that chart. Now, obviously, for my geekness, I was like going, oh, that's significant. So let me just explain. Astrology is something I've been learning for the last year, as anyone who watches my channel already knows. And very much astrology works with mythological themes and mythological archetypes. Now, I've always been a firm believer that superheroes, or spandex, are very much the embodiment of a modern mythology. We see the same archetypes, we see the same themes going through the stories as they are presented to us month after month after month. And like a good loyal fan, I always keep coming back. So, seeing that this full moon is conjunct the Mars of the chart of Infinite Crisis made me go, oh, that is something. Now, these charts, for the astrologers watching this, I am assuming a birthplace of New York, because that's where DC's offices are. And I'm assuming a birth time of 6 a.m. when the newsstands start opening, or at least start selling things to people on their way to work, and they've already received their delivery, so the comics are on the stands. Parents could be picking them up for the children, or let's be honest, parents can be picking them up for themselves. Look at me, I'm 47, and I'm still reading my comics every month. Well, week. So that is when the story is birthed into the public consciousness. So I'm considering the point of publication stroke distribution to be the point of birth. Now, assuming that we have Mars as the ruler of the ascendant in this Infinite Crisis chart. So let me just bring that up for you. So, the chart of a fictional story, really the ascendant would be the dominating factor in that chart, as in how the story is presented to the world. So, immediately, the full moon, conjunct the Mars, leads me to the ascendant and leads me to the story of Infinite Crisis. Now, for those people who are not so familiar with what Infinite Crisis was, well, if you've been watching any of the CW series, they've recently did a version of a 1985 classic story called Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was designed to get rid of all their multiple Earths and just have one nice, simple Earth where everybody was on and readers won't get confused and everything works fine. It didn't work out quite like that because there was still ended up being continuity errors, and if you know any geeks, you know that continuity is a very, very important factor, and breaking with continuity without a good reason is a scandal. So 2005 was the 20th anniversary of this. Now, it was an event written by Jeff Jones and illustrated by Phil Jimenez, George Perez, Ivan Reis, and Jerry Ordway, all classic and superb artists. Now, it was a 7-issue miniseries, but there was a build-up to these series. 4 individual miniseries. I'm going to actually count 5. Because I want to look at the work that was going on within the Justice League. So the first one would be the Ranthanagar War, which is a distant war on an alien planet, but, well, 2 alien planets, but It does relate to Earth in quite a big way because Earth has representatives on both planets, because of course it does, it's comics. Then we have the OMAC project, which really is a crusade against a minority, metahumans, driven by hate and carried by a nanotechnological infection. So it was showing people losing their volition and being driven to actions that they cannot control, but also there's the concept of the infection, the nanotechnology that is spreading through the populace to create these, what they were called was OMACs, or each one was a one-man army corps, which is where the phrase OMAC comes from. But there's also, it's very interesting about that level of hate and division and propaganda that was fueling this movement against the metahumans, although they haven't helped themselves. I will get to that in a moment. So we can look at the similarity between that story and what's going on in the world right now. Well, quite dramatically, a nanotechnological infection. We have the coronavirus, an airborne infection. We have fake news and the whole division created by election fever and numerous agents that, in my eyes, are doing what they can to propel hate against the other, such as the right wing in America criticising the left wing not doing so bad at doing exactly the same to the right wing, and then you get it confused with Russian fake news and troll farms. You've got the QAnon movement, which I'm not convinced is not a Russian troll farm, but enough said about that. But you can see the similarities growing. And with the Ranthanagar War, we have the image of distant wars that seem to be isolated where they are, but will or can spill out into to have consequences in the main world. I mean, what have we got going on at the moment? We have the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. We have the Russian occupation of Crimea, which interestingly seems to have fallen from the news. But I was reading an article a couple of nights ago where the Ukrainian government is trying to get an international working party together to highlight about the Russian occupation of Crimea. So the next series we have is Villains United, where basically in the story Lex Luthor is gathering all the villains into one coherent force and working to his agenda, which I would relate that to Putin and the Russian involvement in many European elections and political landscapes, as well as the American ones. I'm not being America-centric here. Then we also have the Day of Vengeance. Now, this is where the Spectre, who is the angel of God's wrath, basically, that normally is bound to a human soul. Only this particular human soul, Jim, oh my God, I've forgotten his name. I am not worthy to wear this shirt. Jim has just gone, no, stuff it, I'm going to heaven. Thank you, I've had enough of this now. And so the Spectre goes on a rampage to destroy magic. Now, I have yet to relate that to an event, but as I say, there are 5 events here that I'm looking at, and 4 of them I've found that synchronicities. I've also lost touch with sort of the magical community, or the say the UFO community, a lot of the conspiracy communities that may have something to say about that one, but I don't know. But the big one that I want to focus on is what was going on in the Justice League. So as we start this story, Wonder Woman has just killed an important public figure, Maxwell Lord, on primetime television. Now, Maxwell Lord is the driving force behind this OMAC infection, but the world didn't know that. In the meantime, Batman is recovering from the news that was revealed in a crossover, a few months prior, the year prior, that he had been mind wiped by one of his teammates with the approval of half the team as they sought vengeance against a villain for basically attacking and raping a team member's wife. So, with the public face of Wonder Woman having done what she did, and the internal politics, we can see that faith of the public in the institution of the JLA is broken, and that faith of the membership, i.e. Batman, Superman, what have you, in the structure of their team is also broken. We can see that similar lack of faith by the public in their institutions is rampant across the world at the moment. It is not just Americans with their political system or even something like the USPS, but that friction between the populace and their institutions that have been serving them for a long time is apparent right across Europe. Look at the feelings against the EU. It's apparent here in Britain. And there seems to be a general worldwide distrust of anything that is seen to be the elite or the establishment. Really interesting, just on an aside, especially as noticing about Batman. The symbol for 8 to 9 degrees Taurus, the Omega symbol, is bats streaming out of a cave at dusk, which is very much, that speaks volumes as to the whole idea of Batman getting his name. It's drawing that attention to Batman. Now, the interpretation of this Omega symbol says that the bats of the Omega symbol are the contents of the subconscious, i.e. the cave, whose time of awakening has come. Now, if you're watching one of my shows on YouTube, then you've heard the term Great Awakening from somebody else as well. I've tried to avoid it, but I think it's even crept into my shows. I'm not sure how much stock I put by it. And who seek release from the place that they've been dormant. So we have this unearthing of secrets, which is very much what we have with the position of Pluto, with the Capricorn stellium. There is still this constant unearthing of secrets. Now, if we look at the chart of the full moon, we notice that the sun is in fact ruled by Pluto in Capricorn, or it's ruled by Mars retrograde in Aries. Now, by modern standards, it's ruled by Pluto in Capricorn. There we have that Plutonic secrets revealing. But interestingly, the Mars retrograde in Aries also ruling, because in the Infinite Crisis chart, we also see that Mars and Mercury are both retrograde. So there's that same urge of, look at this, there's a link here. You can also see that Venus, for the Infinite Crisis chart, is conjunct Jupiter and Pluto. Now, those are of the full moon. Those are two incredibly powerful aspects. Let me just find my notes for that, because they give a really, really good message. So I'm treating the full moon as the transit chart, and obviously the Infinite Crisis as the natal chart. So if we have transit Jupiter conjunct natal Venus, it softens any difficulties you may have in all your relationships as well as your friendships. That is a symbol of coming together. You can be the center of attention, and for some reason you attract well-being and economic benefits. Well, that sounds like something more positive. Let's have a look at what's going on when Pluto is there. So Again, it's a form of transformation of relationships. There's this is something that it's going to be a long-term process. Now, you may find that it's a bit weird me using the Infinite Crisis chart as a natal chart, but I noted in my full moon videos about how this the sun of this full moon is conjunct the Saturn of the end of the Mayan calendar chart. So, the end of the Mayan calendar is pretty obviously, because the world didn't end, the start of a whole new cycle. So this full moon is bringing our attentions back to the passage of time, to the passage of this cycle in and of itself. It is the Sun conjunct Saturn is a stand up and be counted. And with this Infinite Crisis chart, we're seeing a Y stand up and be counted. This Infinite Crisis chart in itself is quite interesting because it details the process of the story. It gives the natal promise of the story. Now, I am not skilled enough. I am nowhere skilled enough to actually donate how to alliterate how that occurs. So I did have a chat when planning for this video with, I'll call him my astrologer, but basically an astrologer friend of mine. And I just want to draw your attention to one thing that came up in that conversation. Well, more than one thing.
Definitely with Mercury and Jupiter in the first house with the moon, that does add a like multiplicity and very fertile kind of sense. Like the moon in Scorpio is in full, that's true. Which might mean that whatever is put out will not be without effort and without a very harsh process and traumatizing process.
Yeah, oh yeah, loads of people died.
But the water signs are fertile. Jupiter is another sign of fertility. The moon is a sign of fertility. So it's a house that could be very prolific. Jupiter and Mercury are very prolific in the first house in general. So ideals, like you have multiple realities, multiple ways things could happen, you know, multiple versions of the same thing. Mercury and Jupiter can give that sense of multiplicity in the first. Mercury being retrograde, giving the sense that this was a very slow process that started with no Earths and then thousands and thousands of infinite realities, and then it ended up with a finite number of realities, but that was good enough, you know, after all this traumatizing process. So the thing is, Mercury is retrograde ruling then that midheaven, right?
Yeah.
And
oh, is it? Oh yeah, it would do, wouldn't it?
So that's the process happening in 3 phases, right? That's the kind of process that you would expect in a retrograde to manifest. It would be this thing that takes a long time, doesn't have a clear ending in sight, and that you just have to go through it through a long time, you know, to integrate it into your own experience and story of life in general.
Yeah.
With that in the ascendant, the very core of the story is related to that midheaven in Virgo, that how that impacted the reputation, you know, of the Justice League in general, of like Scorpio is this thing that uncovers the dirt of people and of previously idealistic scenarios and makes you face the harsh truth because it's in that Martian sign. And Mars here is in Taurus, so it's quite Mars in Taurus retrograde is exposing, especially because it's about to turn direct, it's exposing the flaws in the structures, the flaws in the institutions, right? It's coming up with whatever is like the goal of this whole situation that ended up with the multiple Earths was to basically uncover in the end all the shit that was already implied within the Justice League, but also to improve it in a way, because Jupiter and Mercury both, as I said, are very prolific in the first house, but the moon in its fall and Mars ruling it from the other angle opposite to it, being in its exile, really gives you that perspective that the things that were prolific because of necessity. That's a mercurial word for you. I will tell you why some point in time.
Right.
But out of necessity, you have to be creative, and that creativity really puts you in another level of existence and of experience. But you do have to cut ties completely with the past experience that you were having before. So never again were the
You mean
heroes
history
seen.
gets rebooted again?
Oh yes, that could happen.
Because
Uh,
there was always infinite Earths. Then there was only ever one Earth ever, because the other Earths never existed in the first place. And now there was, at the end of the story, remember this is the start of the story. At the end of the story, there was 52 new Earths that had just come into being, and they had existed since the dawn of time.
And you see Saturn, which is the planet that represents time and structure, is in Leo, which is its stability, right? It's its exile.
Yeah.
Which means time means nothing. But at the same time, it's trining that sun. So the notion that time means nothing really was something that was influencing everyone's notion of reality, because the sun is in Sagittarius trining that position. People were aware that they had multiple realities. Like, people knew that was something that was driving the notion of what was real and what needed to happen, because Jupiter, the ruler of that sun, is in the first house as well. Saturn is overseeing that first house from a superior square. So it's like this notion that we have no time and that we need to fix time, basically, is what's driving everyone to come up out of necessity with a new notion of how to live reality and how to understand reality. So you can describe it as that.
So as you can see, this Infinite Crisis chart certainly has some messages for us at the moment, and I will come to the point of why I've even made this connection in the first place in a few moments. But first, David had some more things to say.
So you can relate this Mars to the full moon in a way to as the point where people finally realize what action they have not been taking, in that infinite war. So after all the shit has been revealed about the Justice League, after you got Lex Luthor rising up his army of villains and the bot thingies being disseminated, then you got the heroes basically going internally and asking themselves, where have we been going wrong to create all this scenario?
So if, like me, you've been watching all of the videos regarding this new moon from all the astrologers, you'll know already that people are pointing out that this is quite possibly the most important full moon of the year. Now, it's been a big year for astrology, full stop. It has been a crazy year, and month upon month upon month, we've had the most dramatic aspect of this and the most dramatic aspect of that and the most dramatic aspect of the other. But that's because that is how this year has been. People have been talking about 2020 since the 60s, going, oh, that's going to be a big one. But I do believe that this Infinite Crisis chart has a lot to tell us. So again, if we look at the composite chart, I'm just going to point out some of the themes that I've picked out. I've already looked at that element of relationships, an element of uncovering secrets, and efforts to regain faith in other people, in institutions. And by having that faith, we are reshaping what the potential future can be. Now, this message is hammered home when you look at the synastry between the two charts, the comparison. I suppose it'd be synastry, wouldn't it? We have the full moon Saturn sextile the natal ascendant, the infinite crisis is ascendant. Now this, the definition for this is your relationships with others should be solidified during this time. You can make new goals for the future, and you take this time as an opportunity for this. The patterns you establish now will be harder to change later. So it's important to do what you want to be doing. Now this is a message that's been coming through again and again on the at least the last 6 months of the astrology. So this is a period of discipline. Organization and your personal growth is more important than enjoying yourself and having fun. And yes, we know that there's a shortage of enjoying ourselves and having fun, and there's been plenty of work to do, whether you're stuck at home or not. Whether you are actually in employment or not, there is still no end of work to do. So if we actually look at that moon conjunct the natal Mars, it talks about emotions intensifying and people desiring change. Again, no newsflash. People are desiring change. It is warning against confrontations and rash behavior, because again, rash behavior right now is not exactly well aspected with a killer virus being on the loose. Then we have the infinite crisis Mercury semi-sextile the Sun. So there's showing a harmonious relationship of communicating what we want for the future. And then we also have the full moon Saturn sextile to the infinite crisis Mercury, and it's showing that this is a transit that indicates that thoughts, mental attitude, points of view, etc. have reached a level of stability and maturity. So you feel safe with communicating with others about things that you are sure about, and you are sure about your opinion on most things. Now there's good or bad with that, but it's an excellent time to plan study projects or to plan for negotiations. So again, the whole idea of negotiations right now is a good idea. But what really brings it home to me is that the two Urani, from the infinite crisis to the full moon, they are a sextile apart within a 2-degree orb, and there's that sense of shaking everything up. So we're shaking up on the context of the relationships that we have with everything and everyone, because when I'm talking about relationships here, I'm not just meaning about the people in your home or the people in your love life or even the people at work. I'm talking about your relationships with work, with local government, with the structures that are around you, with even to a point with your lifestyle, with your house. Not in an astrological term, but you know, there was some aspect a few weeks ago about that could indicate people going, yeah, I don't want to live here anymore, I want to get moving. And there is a lot of that redefinition going on, and the story of Infinite Crisis is all about redefinition. It was redefinition of a universe back into a multiverse, and this is the positive note that I want to end on, because I've probably, by the time I finish editing this, it's going to be about half an hour long. We started Infinite Crisis issue 1 with the heroes severely questioning what they were doing and what their place was in the world questioning them back. We started with a singular universe and only the ghosts of what had existed before, of the previous multiverse, an infinite amount of worlds that had been snuffed out so well that they'd never existed in the first place. And by the end of the Infinite Crisis storyline, we had a multiverse back. Okay, it was not as big as what we used to have. It was not an infinite multiverse. There was 52 realities. 52 is better than 1. It has a more chance of expression of life. And as I think David will have explained in the clip, that is that influence of Saturn. And because Saturn has featured so very heavily in our lives, it's, yes, we can have the multiplicity that we are after. We can have the growth, we can have the new futures, new options coming to us if we're putting the work in, if we are using this time to redefine our relationships with everything and everyone, and also our relationships with our own wants, our needs, our desires, to really take charge of a future. Because that conjunction between the sun of the full moon chart, the I am, and the Saturn of the end of the Mayan calendar is reminding us we are here to start a new cycle. You need to stand up and be counted. It is time to start a new cycle. And I think that's a perfect way to end. So I would really like to hear your comments and feedback on this because, well, I'm the only one I know of on YouTube who is relating the world of comics and spandex with the world of astrology. And I would love to see what you think about it. Thank you very much. And as I say, I will be live streaming 6 p.m. GMT on Halloween, and you can get your standard Full Moon Gods at Play readings during that live stream or the day after when I've finished editing and chopping everything up. That will take me some time. In the meantime, there is a link in the description below. My brain went blank then. There's a link in the description below for the Facebook page for this channel, and that's where I post not just my videos but all of those astrology videos that I'm talking about from many and practically all of the YouTube astrologers that I find and that I hold some stock in. And as I think I said on the full moon video, watch the Ksenia Moore discussion on the full moon and also Anastasia Cosmic Astrologer. And there was still a third one that I wanted to recommend, and Wonder Girl Astrologer. So it's Anastasia that I forgot in the original full moon video. Oops. So stay tuned. Obviously, I'm a YouTube channel. This is my birthday. Well, this is the YouTube channel's birthday. So like, share, subscribe. Please, if you did like the video, do press the like button. This is one video that I would like to get out there because I want the feedback. I want to know what people think. Okay. Cheers.